Hello, and welcome back to Your Story Stinks, the podcast where I talk about terrible stories. I'm going to preface this with something because I'm kind of breaking a rule when I do this episode. So, today we're talking about How Not to Summon a Demon Lord, which is a anime, a light novel, and a manga. But it began as a light novel. And when I did, I think, multiple episodes on that time I got reincarnated as a slime, I basically said that I couldn't do light novels from like a story perspective. And the reason for that is that basically every light novel, every web novel, every like webtoon is essentially terrible for the same reason. There's not a whole lot of variation. You could just pick them out, and it's like shooting fish in a barrel. It's not hard, it's not interesting, and I would basically be making the same points over and over again. That time I got reincarnated as a slime was unique because it was uniquely bad in a very specific way. That's also the case for this piece of media, How Not to Summon Demon Lord, because on one hand, it wants to be ecchi, although it's really just hentai, and it also wants to be sexy, but it's not, because I'm not sure that it understands how to be sexy, or how to write a romance, or how to do anything. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about that today, because it's uniquely bad in a way I haven't seen before. But I feel like I still need to kind of preface all of this with my conversations on light novels because I have the same reaction to most light novels that I think a lot of people have towards like AI generated stuff, where it doesn't matter how good it is or how creative it is, they just see AI and they have like an emotional reflex where they're just like, I hate it. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter how it was used, it doesn't matter like nothing about it matters aside from that one point. That one point spoils everything. And that's kind of how I feel about like every web novel and every webtoon and every light novel that has ever been written because I don't know if it's possible for there to be a good one. Like, I wish that was not the case, but I've never found a single one that I wasn't immediately going, this is going to be absolute garbage. And I've never been surprised yet, like by any of them. Every single one I come across, I'm like, this is going to be terrible. And usually it's worse than I expect. In fact, my bar is so low now that in order to just pass the bar, it needs to not be written like a manifesto. Like, that's the basic part. Like, the lowest bar possible is I shouldn't be reading this and thinking to myself, going, this is a manifesto written by someone. Like, it's a fictional story, but it's clearly meant to be a manifesto. Like, that's what this is. This is a character who hates the world and has been bullied mercilessly for no reason and thinks everybody's unfair and that he deserves all the bitches. Like, that, it's just so low. It's in the ground. And it's not even a case of where it's wish fulfillment because I don't understand the wish fulfillment part. Like, I understand the desire of wish fulfillment, but it's not good wish fulfillment because it's not fulfilling any wish. Like, if you want to be the self insert character, if you want to put yourself in the role of the main character, then the main character has to, like, have a character. They need to be someone who we want to be like, and every one of these protagonists in every light novel is just the worst human being, or they're so incompetent that you don't want to be like them. Like, it would be an insult to be like, oh, this is what the author thinks I, the reader, am like. It's insulting. But that's even more true for How Not to Summon a Demon Lord, because How Not to Summon a Demon Lord assumes tastes for the audience that are, well, Lolita esque. It seems to assume that the audience reading it is really into like prepubescent girls to the point where it's very creepy. like is off-putting. I am very hard to shock. Okay, I have seen some pretty horrendous things, and I'm pretty hard to like eat. I don't know what the right word is. Gross out? It's not really even gross. It's just like ick. Like I am aware of like no less than four talking vagina movies. You know, like I am familiar with an ET porno that takes place in Victorian Germany. All right, I am familiar with some weird shit just because the weirdest shit is always the most interesting. This is not that. This is creepy. This is off-putting. This is gross in a way that make me wonder if people who generally like this should be put on a watch list. That's how this makes me feel. And it makes me feel more so because it seems to think that this is cute and like desirable, or that the protagonist looks good for what it's doing, and that is not the case. So before we go any further, I just want to say that there's going to be a lot of discussion of pedophilia and rape and a whole lot of other things that are very bad, which makes me wonder how this ever got greenlit or made and not immediately, like, I don't know how the writer of this didn't get arrested. Like, I'm pretty sure in the United States you could go to jail for way less than this. It's very creepy. So yeah, if you're weirded out by those topics, yeah, don't go any further. Just know this is dumpster fire. It's terrible, and it's really creepy. But let's delve into it, I guess. So let's just sum up the premise, I guess you could say. The core premise is one that you've seen like a million times by now. A guy who is socially awkward and spends all of his time playing MMOs is then summoned into the MMO world as his character, a premise which has been done a million times and is never interesting. I'm not sure why people keep doing this. I guess you could say that it's a bit Overlord-esque, but Overlord also isn't good. Like, Overlord is weird and creepy and horribly written, and I don't know why it's popular. Because, honestly, Overlord is an entirely other video, so I won't go into it, but I don't understand this whole, what if I was my MMO character and I was always awesome? Because it just tells me that whoever's writing this has never played an MMO. Like, MMO characters are, by design, disposable, essentially. Like, the whole point of an MMO character is that they're just another person in this world around a bunch of other people who are also in this world. So the concept that there is one amazing player in any MMO is just wrong. So, right away, it just doesn't feel correct. Because every MMO, the end game is going to be raids. And raids require large amounts of people. Like, there's never one character who's superior to all of the others, because that would just be a bad video game. And so, every time one of these, like, oh, I was put into this MMO, like, it just feels wrong. Like, it just comes off as terrible writing. Like, period. But, of course, you know, the player, our main character, is of course the greatest player that ever was, and he spends all of his day like defeating other players, so his life is boring and pointless. And again, I don't know why our writer thinks that this is a good audience stand-in. It assumes that our audience stand-ins are the greatest players to ever live, and that's just probably not true. Just straight up, like, I don't know how you could relate to somebody who is the greatest of all time, basically. It would be like if your protagonist was Faker from League of Legends, the most decorated player in that game of all time, who literally has won, like, what, 6 world championships in that game, and being like, oh yeah, our players can relate to him. No, you can't. Like, by design, you literally can't. But our protagonist is, of course, summoned into the game world, but it's not the game world, it's a different world that just happens to operate on the same logic, even though that makes no sense. It's not explained, and it's not clearly meant to be explained, and while they try to do some twists where it's like, oh, in this world, summoning magic is really powerful, and elemental magic isn't really powerful because people can't die in this world the way they can in an MMO, it's just, I don't know, it's not done well, and our protagonist isn't interesting. Like, his whole thing is like, I am this really socially awkward character, and I'm role playing as a demon lord. But the problem with this is that he's not role playing. Like, role playing assumes that there's going to be a point where he's not acting like this. And because he's just acting like this all the time, this isn't role playing, this is just lying to everybody else. The protagonist is basically a con artist. And that would be more honest than what they're trying to do, which is saying, oh no, you see, he's really confident, but he's not really confident because he's just role playing as a confident person. But because he's doing this all the time, constantly, with everybody, including during sex, he's not role playing anymore. And no role player could role play this well without being like a psychopath. Like, he gets into it to the point at all times, even when he's alone, that it's clearly not role playing. And that whole concept breaks down. Role playing would require him to break character at like a lot, not just internally but externally. Okay? Like, actors, when they play a role, do not themselves like become the character all along. When they do that, we call that method acting, and usually it's really bad. Like, usually people hate those people. So the fact that he's doing this, the fact that that's his modus operandi for this, is just not good. But it's even less good when you consider the character he's role-playing with the other characters who are around him. And this is where we gotta talk about, like, slavery and pedophilia and rape and a bunch of other things, because all of this is involved and none of this is good. In fact, it's really off-putting and really creepy. So, besides our protagonist, who is, of course, overpowered and has all the magic and can get away with everything, basically, his two other protagonists are a lolly cat girl and a busty elf. And the elf is stupid to the point where you start to wonder if, like, she would forget to breathe if people didn't remind her. And the cat girl is a tsundere, of course, because why not? And for some reason, she's also drawn as though she is a child. And it's really creepy. Anyway, they're his slaves because they intended to enslave him, and instead it was reflected onto them, and now they wear slave collars all the time, and they are his property. Even though he doesn't treat them as property, but they keep finding reasons why, like, they can't take off the slave collars. And this becomes a plot point, and it's really weird. Now, let me be the first to say that I'm not trying to kink shame for this specifically, because the whole slave thing has been a kink forever. Like, Princess Leia slave costume, like, there's a reason why people find that, like, attractive. There's a whole host there, and I'm not trying to be moral about that. But here's the thing. If you're going to do that, why exactly are you never going to do anything with it? Like, it would be interesting if the main character was, like, openly uncomfortable with this fact. Like, they were into it, and he was openly uncomfortable with it. But he's just kind of neutral about it. Like, he's like, oh, you're my property, but I don't want to actually order you around. And that's really boring, because it should be the case to make it interesting where there needs to be, like, a conflict there, and there's no conflict. Like, at every point, like, of the story that this comes up, he's like, no, I'm not awful, I'm not a slave owner, I wouldn't do that, I will treat them right. And that's good, but it's also boring from a narrative perspective, because there's no conflict there. It's basically like, oh, they're his slaves now, he is neutral on it, they are neutral on it, nothing comes of this. Like, it is unneeded. You could remove the slave collars and nothing would change. That's how bad this is. That's how poorly written this is. Like, if you're gonna do it, either do something with it or don't do something with it. Like, this is, again, why I don't tend to talk about these kinds of stories, because every light novel is just violating the laws of writing every page. Like, the most basic laws of writing include things like Chekhov's gun. Don't introduce something if you're not going to use it. That's the most basic rule of writing. Don't introduce a bunch of crap that has nothing to do with the overall narrative. And the slave collars don't. Like, other than the fact that they're there and other people comment on them, it basically just feels like it's a reason for the main character to get good guy points, but he's not a good guy. Like, he's not doing anything, so he doesn't get good guy points for not abusing the system. You don't get good guy points for not being a bad person. You know? You actually have to, like, do good things to be a good guy. Like, you can't just, like, oh, I have slaves, but I don't mistreat them, therefore I am a good person. Like, it doesn't work. But he's also a rapist, because now I'm not gonna say with them, because he doesn't force himself on the characters that he's in technically the slave master of. He forces himself on a character that is the guild master because he is given alcohol by her and gets drunk and then has sex with her. Although it's not really sex, it's not intended to be sex, but it's basically sex. Like, at the very least, it's sexual assault. Okay? And he, of course, doesn't remember it, but she does, and apparently is into it, which is immediately, like, a red flag on this story of, like, the plot point of she's sexually assaulted, but she's secretly into it. Um, like, that's just a terrible, like, plot point. Mostly because it just removes any and all, like, conflict from the story. Again, I'm not trying to be like a moral nag here, because obviously the people who are going to like this story are going to be trying to come into it from the perspective of this thing has my kinks and I'm into it. And I don't want to shame those people, but it's not going hard enough on the kinks to be good for those people is what I mean. Like, if you want like slave harem stuff, this is not going to be for you. If you want wish fulfillment stuff, this is not going to work for you. If you want good writing, this is not going to be for you. I don't know who this is for, because it doesn't do anything well enough to be, like, enjoyable. It does everything halfway, you know? Like, yeah, obviously the main character is a blob, and all the women like him even when he sexually assaults them, but again, if you want, like, that kind of stuff, you can get it from hentai. You don't need it from this. It's not well written enough, and the characters aren't well defined enough to be interesting. And again, all of the characters kind of look like lollies, and so it's really creepy. Like, the guild master is a bunny girl who also looks very young, and it's really creepy, and quite honestly, I was willing to give this series the benefit of the doubt until like 33 chapters into the manga, where I realized that I was never going to be able to go further with this because the plot points it was throwing at us are so creepy and uncomfortable that I can't, like, accept it anymore, like, at all. So the major plot point that happens is that the Demon Lord Creek character from this universe, their soul is in the cat girl. And they're like, okay, well, that's bad. Let's take the soul out of the cat girl by reviving the Demon Lord. Never mind the fact that this is a terrible plan on its face. But they're like, okay, let's get the soul out of there by reviving them. So they do. But the problem is they revive them, and they are revived as a literal child. Now, you could make all kinds of, like, arguments by why this could create, like, all kinds of, like, situations. Like, you could create all kinds of plots with this concept of the child is literally the most powerful being in the universe. Like that one, what's it called? Twilight Zone episode, you know, where the kid is just like, you're a bad person, and then turns him into, you know, a jack-in-the-box. You know, this kid who has all the power, basically, and everybody is forced to, you know, tiptoe around. You could do something like that. That's not what they go with. No, what they go with is this is a character who is a child, canonically, not just looks like a child. No, this is a literal child. And they're like, okay, well, in order to prove to everyone that she's safe, let's put a slave collar on her. So now the literal child is wearing a slave collar, and then her and the protagonist have sex. Now they don't have sex, quote unquote, in the like hentai way. They just do the thing that causes her to do the like a hegao thing, where they clearly do the sex because, and again, she comes on to him, but that's not an excuse because she's a literal child. Like the fact that the child comes on to the adult and then they do it is not an excuse. Like this is creepy and uncomfortable. They are drawn like a child. Their personality is that of a child. They are treated by everybody as a child. Like this is the worst thing. This is just the worst. Like it feels wrong looking at it and reading it. And again, I don't understand the goal of this series. Like I don't understand what the writer's goal is. Because again, if you want this, you can get it in hentai that you're going to enjoy more. If you're not looking for this, none of this is going to make you happy. Again, if this is meant to be like wish fulfillment, self-insert, I'm not sure why the author thinks that the reader wants to be self-inserted into a pedophile. Like, I don't understand this mentality because it doesn't work. Nothing about this series works, and there's no conflict, so there's no character. Now, again, this all kind of goes back to the fact that I'm not sure it's possible to write a good light novel, like in this genre. I'm not sure there's a single good one, because they're all terrible. And they're all terrible for the same reason, which is, basically, if you want to write a self-insert character, you can't do anything with them. Like, once your character becomes a self-insert for the audience, the character cannot change or adapt or develop any personality traits or anything else, because then they might not be a self-insert character anymore. And so, literally, every series hits this problem. I mentioned Overlord before. Overlord is a perfect example of this is meant to be like a self-insert for the audience character, but because of everything he has to do and the things that he does, he's clearly no longer a self-insert. That Time I Was Reincarnated as a Slime is another good example, where Rimuru is meant to be this self-insert character, and then he clearly stops being that almost immediately, because no human being could relate to this character, and because he has to go and do things that don't make sense all the time so that plot can happen, again, he's not a self-insert anymore. In this case, the self-insert character is just a pedophile, so I don't understand the intention of this. Like, it's not a good self-insert, it's not a good, like, wish fulfillment, it's not even, like, anything that you could grab onto, and the bar for being a quote-unquote good person is so low in this series that it's basically underground. Like, it almost seems like it was written for, like, r/nice guys, where it's just like, oh man, I'm owned all these children as slaves, but because they come onto me, and I fuck them, and I'm not the one coming onto them, I'm a good person, right? Again, it doesn't make any sense. Now, I will say this, which is that they bother to try to quantify slavery in this universe, which again doesn't make sense, because, like, if you're there because you want to read about a slave harem, you probably don't care about the moral and ethical implications of it, but the fact that the series intentionally draws, like, lines about how it works and the moral and ethical implications of it, it makes it seem like the writer is not comfortable with it, which makes you wonder why they write it. So there's a scene where he goes to try to take off the slave collars because he doesn't know how, and so he goes to a slave auction where, like, he's expecting it to be a place where they're all abused and horribly treated, and what he finds are lots of cat girls basically in cages like pets, and they're like, oh yeah, we don't mistreat them because, you know, mistreating your product is bad. And this is treated as though this excuses the practice, or this makes it okay, but this doesn't make sense, because outside of there, every reaction that every character has towards slaves is negative. Like, every other character who encounters the two other main characters who are slaves to him, they're treated horribly. Like, characters will see the slave collars and they'll be like, how dare a slave talk to me? How dare you allow your property to act this way? Like, every other character acts like this is a slavery universe that would be familiar to us, where, again, slaves are property and treated horribly. But the slave auction itself is not that. And the person who's selling them acts like this is just normal, like you're basically just hiring a mail order bride, but clearly the rest of the world does not treat them this way, and so it doesn't make any sense. But what makes it worse is the fact that when they go into the back to try to remove them, it basically just teaches them how to fuck them without fucking them, and it's really creepy. Again, I don't know who this is for. If you want a slave system auction where a guy has a slave harem, there's lots of hentai for that. But I don't know, like, they're not going to go all the way, and if the author is not comfortable writing this, why is he doing it? Why write it explicitly like this? Why write it so that the slaves are treated better when they're owned by the slave owner, like auctioneer person, than they are outside of it? Because literally everybody else who encounters them treats them like literal garbage, and it makes no sense. And again, if you wanted to have a like moral or ethical slave trade system, if you that was what you wanted to write, if you were like, oh, this is not like out of place, or there are rules about it so that you can't mistreat them, or whatever. If you wanted to create that system in a piece of writing, you could do it. But in order to do that, you need to make sure that every character that they encounter doesn't immediately assume that they are, like, subhuman. You know? You can't have all your characters who are not slaves look at the slaves and go, wow, those are slaves. They are subhuman trash. Like, you can't do that. You can't have them do that as just a societal representation of this class, if that's what you're going to do. Okay? Like, it wants to, like, have its cake and eat it too, kind of, where you're in this situation where the writer doesn't seem to want to go all the way with anything. And again, he's writing a bunch of children as sex slaves, basically. You know, he doesn't want to go all the way with this, so he's just, like, doing it halfway, and it's just going to satisfy nobody. Like, if this is, like, one of your red lines, you're not going to read this series, and if what you're looking for is, like, super hardcore slave harem fantasy, this is not going to do it for you. And I have to, like, stop, and I have to, like, take a step back, because my next thought is, okay, well, why do these plot points exist? Like, from a writing standpoint. Because, again, I don't want to judge this too harshly from, like, a moral and ethical standpoint, even though the writer seems to take great pains to try to make it seem like a moral good for some reason, or at the very least that his protagonist isn't just the worst character ever, even though he is. Like, the slave collars don't come into play, really, in the sense that, like, he's not making them do anything. And there's, like, you could remove the slave collars from, like, a plot point, and nothing would change. At all. Like, literally nothing would change. Like, they would all still do the same things, and act the same ways, and nothing would change. The only reason that I can think of that they have the slave collars is so that literally everybody looks at them and treats them like garbage, which makes the protagonist by default look good, but this is addition by subtraction. Like, this doesn't make our protagonist good. This just means everyone else is terrible. Okay? And that doesn't mean that he's a good person. He still owns child slaves. Okay? In one case, with the demon, like, lord character, he chooses as a solution to make her his slave. Okay? Like, he is not a good person. But the author seems very afraid that if he's not constantly introducing, like, the most comically over-the-top evil characters, that we will clue into the fact that our protagonist is scum of the earth. Like, that just seems like the play here. Like, that seems to be what they do. Rather than having our protagonist be a good person doing good things or treating people well, he just is neutral while everybody else treats his slaves like trash. Okay? And again, this doesn't make him a good person. And again, I don't know who this is for. Like, this keeps coming back where, like, this is the core plot point of the entire series. More than the fact that he's a demon lord, more than the fact that he's in a fantasy world, more than the fact that he has a harem, the reality is, like, the core plot point that runs through this series is that the characters that follow him around are legally his property. And he is ambivalent about all of this. So because of that, because he's ambivalent, because he just doesn't care, like, there's nothing there. There's nothing to latch onto. There's no character development. There's no, like, forward momentum. It's just the status quo is they're into him, they're his slaves, and he adds more slaves as time goes on. And they're all, of course, children. I don't understand this. Again, I don't understand why every character that's around him is basically a child, either in mind or body or both. Again, it's real creepy, but, like, I keep hitting this point because it's the whole series. Like, there's not a lot here, and I don't know who it's written for. It kind of goes back to, like, my theory that it's impossible to make a good light novel. Like, I'm not sure that you could write a good light novel or a good isekai or a good... And yeah, I know it's not pronounced that way, but until the, like, genre becomes anything more than just a dumpster fire, I'm never going to pronounce it correctly. It doesn't deserve to be pronounced correctly. You could argue that Portal Fantasies from, you know, Digimon on back, all the way back to, like, the Chronicles of Narnia or whatever, or, like, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, you know, stuff like that. Like, those were actually good, but the genre itself right now is just garbage. I don't know if it's possible, as the genre exists right now, to write something good. Because the requirements of the genre right now are antithetical to, like, you know, an actual good story. Like, I'm not sure you could actually write, this character is in a video game world where it's not shit. Like, Ready Player One barely managed to do that. And Ready Player 2 failed completely, which showed immediately how shallow that concept is. Like, you can't do it because, again, wish fulfillment doesn't work when you have to write a character. I think the longest character that ever worked as, like, wish fulfillment was, like, Harry Potter. And that only lasted, like, 4 books before the author had to, like, jettison everything they did to write a character very quickly in 3 books. Because, again, as I said in my Harry Potter review, Harry Potter is an audience insert character who has no opinions on anything, including is slavery good or bad. Like, I forget if it's the 2nd book or the 3rd book, where, like, the whole house elf slavery thing, and of course you have Hermione who's like, slavery is morally and ethically wrong, and Ron's like, no, it's not, they want to be enslaved, and Harry has no opinion on anything, because that would mean that our protagonist has to have opinions and character traits, and they just didn't want to do that because it would be, you know, antithetical to writing an audience self-insert, but you can only do that for so long before you have to create a character without actual character traits. So I'm not really sure that it's possible to write a light novel that isn't terrible, and every website from, like, Royal Road to, like Webtoons and webnovel.com and, like, all these websites that post these things, I can't find a single good one. They're all garbage. They're all terrible in the worst way. And, you know, if they're terrible, I don't know how you even get through with something like this. Because, again, how not to summon a demon lord is just r/good, you know, nice guy, like, pedophile fanfiction. Like, that's all it is. It's a guy who has no social skills goes into another world to act like a jerk where everybody thinks he's great, and he has a pedophile slave harem. And that's the whole series. Like, yeah, I stopped at 33 chapters in, but at this point, I feel like I have like, it's not going to get any better. Like, I'm sorry, you created a character explicitly as a child with a child's body and a child's mind, and you made her part of his slave harem, and they fucked. Sorry, I can't go any further than that. You like you can't do that. Like you can't like that's gonna be hanging over the entire series. You can't go any further. And again, that's after he sexually assaults slash rapes another woman while he's drunk. Sorry, I can't. You can't be a good person after that, especially when it's not recognized as like a bad thing. Like it's just I don't know who this is for. I don't know who this was made for. I don't know who reads this and goes, "Yes, this is good." If you want self-insert power fantasy, he's not the most powerful character in the series. So, it doesn't work. If you wanted like slave harem stuff, the fact they're all children is probably going to turn you off of it. And if you're going into this and you're like, oh yes, I want pedophile slave harem, there's hentai you can go out and read. You don't need to be reading this. Like, I don't understand. I don't. I can't wrap my brain around why this was written, especially when the author seems very uncomfortable. Like, the author themselves seems like they know how bad this is, and so they keep trying to morally or ethically tinge it so that the protagonist isn't a monster. Like, they seem aware that having a slave harem like this that's explicitly stated as being these are property is going to make people go, yeah, this character is the worst. And he is, but the writer doesn't want that to be the case, and so they keep trying to excuse it while not excusing it. Again, I started this whole thing by saying that the bar for like every light novel, the first question is this written like a manifesto? Like, and this to me passes that bar. It's not a manifesto, but it does feel like something that somebody who really enjoys r slash nice guys would write. Like a character on there that would like this feels like it was written by an incel or for incels. That's how this feels. And so like I don't get it. It doesn't go hard enough to like appeal to anyone. It's kind of like a gray mush where it's been sanded down and everything is like, oh no, it's not bad. Please don't think our protagonist is an evil pedophile slave lord when that's exactly what he is. Like, it's just, it's not confident to exist. It just isn't. It doesn't have confidence in its own setting and it doesn't have confidence in its own characters to be able to justify its existence. Like, it's like they had an idea, but they were deeply ashamed of it, but they didn't want to write a character that is deeply ashamed of it, so they wrote a story where they just assume that the writer and the readers are all deeply ashamed of what they're interested in. And that's, like, the long and short of it. That is how not to summon a demon lord. It's creepy, like, I'm not a pedophile, but I like lollies fiction. That's what this is. And it's not heartwarming. It's not enjoyable. It's just really, really creepy and off-putting. And reading it made me feel like I needed like 12 showers. Like, I feel like the people who buy this or created this should be on the watch list. That's how it came off to me. It doesn't feel wholesome. It feels insecure. And if you're going to do something that's transgressive, if you're going to do something that is like deeply off-putting to lots of people, if you're going to write something that is by design like super offensive to lots of people, you kind of have to go all in. You kind of have to be like balls to the wall, fully on board with your idea, because if you're not, it just turns into like, oh no, please don't think this is bad. Our protagonist really isn't bad, I swear. He doesn't call his slave harem trash, and he doesn't insult them constantly, and they love him for it, for this bare minimum of being treated like sentient creatures. Like, again, that's what it comes into. It's just everybody around this character showing or trying to show that he's great by him not being the worst creature ever while also being the worst creature ever. I don't know who this is for. I don't. It's not good. Don't read it. Don't read light novels. Don't read webtoons and don't read like web novels because they're all shit. Uh, if you want to tell me one that you think is good, tell me. But 90% of the time they're all garbage, and I don't think I found one that hasn't made me go, "Oh, this is for horrible people," or "This is horribly written." One of those two. It's just not good. This is not a good genre. It's not a good story, and I don't know if that's ever going to change. Anyway, that's all I can say really about like how not to summon a demon lord. I mean, don't read this.